Testing. Testing 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 3. Alright, hello and welcome to my next series setting breakdown. Today is going to be quite possibly the single most complicated series I've done to date, mostly because there's two factors of that involved in this series. The first is that it is a series with, well, there's multiple series written within this one universe. And another thing is that it does involve time travel. So that does complicate things a little bit. But this is going to be a series as written by Karen Chance. It is the Cassie Palmer series and also the Dorina Basarab series. There's both written by Karen Chance. It is also the first series I've been doing this that is not indie publishing or self-published. This is trad published. So let's get on with it. Said there's two series in the books, Cassandra Palmer and the Dorina Basarab series. Right? It is urban fantasy, so basically taking place in our world, or refers to our world repeatedly in a more modern era, although these books are a few decades old, well, a little over a decade old. Some of the subgenres involved in this, for the Cassandra Palmer series, it is does involve a lot of time travel, and for the Dorina Basarab, one of the key components of that is more of a split personality type situation. The series is fairly extensive. It's got currently 12 books published in the Cassie Palmer series. There's going to be another book published by the end of the year, so that'll bring that total up to 13. And the Dorina Basarab series has 7 books currently published, and there's an additional 15 short stories, novellas, and novels that will add some context to the main series. They are not necessary for reading. Alright, like I said, it is in a modern era with cell phones and modern cities. Primary hub of the Cassandra Palmer is set in Las Vegas, Nevada, whereas the Dorina Basarab is primarily set in New York City. So they do, because they are set in different areas, they can be read completely independently. However, there is some crossover, and certain things are not going to make sense at all if you only read one or the other. So I would recommend that you would read both. There is also a reading order set, or it's a timeline of where each book fits in a single cohesive timeline. I have that linked in the description of this video. Alright, now we'll get into the crux of what makes this an urban fantasy. Start with some supernatural beings. Now, primarily we're going to talk about vampires because that is where the focus of the series is. Because while Cassandra Palmer is not a vampire in and of herself, she was raised in a vampire clan. So her perspective and her knowledge base is primarily on vampires and their culture. And with Dorina Basarab, she is a Dhampir, which is a half human, half vampire. So again, her perspective is primarily from the vampire point of view, and that does mean that we learn the most about the vampires in these series. Now, important to note that there are two main ways of becoming a vampire in the series. First is like if you are intentionally changed by another vampire. So basically the whole exchanging of blood over time, and there's no accidental changing someone like that because it has to take place over multiple days and multiple exchanges have to be made. Now the second method of changing is if someone is cursed. One of the main people we will be discussing is Dorina Basarab. He was a cursed vampire. So what happened was he pissed off some people who can use magic, and they inflicted a curse upon him without him knowing. So, and one thing that I found a little interesting is that in this series, vampires don't actually need to bite somebody to drink blood. They do require blood for sustenance, but they're able to actually pull blood away from somebody without even touching them if they're strong enough. So biting somebody to drink the blood directly is considered a little gauche, and is also actually has been made illegal to feed upon the public in general because of how that would lead to them being discovered. Now, the vampires come in various levels. First, there's the adepts, who are the lowest ranked. They're the ones who are immediately turned. But over time, and depending upon the willpower of the person who was turned, they can grow and become masters. Masters defined as someone who is capable of turning another person into a vampire and exerting control over that person. It's a fairly strict society, and they don't believe in freedom or free will. They are also very much on the side of basically a more master and slave relationship, and it's never viewed in a positive light, just viewed as a fact of life for them. Now, within the master ranks themselves, there are various levels. The weakest masters are called level 7 masters, and eventually you get to the strongest, which are the level 1 masters. Now, as a master vampire gets older and stronger, they do tend to develop different abilities, like telekinesis or certain affinities with animals. Next we have the Dhampirs. For a Dhampir, there's really only one way for them to be born, and that is when a vampire is cursed, the curse doesn't necessarily overtake them immediately. So over the few days that it happens, if a father or child, because it can only happen from a male vampire and a female human. So if during that time period a child was fathered, then that child would become a Dhampir. Now, Dhampirs are very rare because they often have an anger issues, and that is like when I mentioned the Berserker before. they become very angry, and they're known to be able to kill vampires, and they're known to be very powerful. So vampires regularly hunt them and kill them, and that is why they are so rare. Next, we're going to talk about the mages. Mages come in multiple types, although mostly we focus on the war mages. Those are the mages who are devoted to combat and to actual violent spells, although some mages focus more on research. Within the mages, there's a special sect called the Gnolls. What they do is they emit an anti-magic wave, basically, which is not something that they can control per se, although they can intentionally try to drain magic. But what they mostly do is just magic simply does not work around them. So they are often feared in a way, but since they cannot use any magic of themselves, that is a specific weakness, and prevents them from being able to defend themselves properly against something that is more like a physical based supernatural being, like werewolves or vampires. It only really protects them against magic, and even then it wouldn't protect them against a sword or a gun. So while they can be powerful, they are also quite vulnerable. Next, we have our psychics and seers. This is rather important sect, although they're also hunted for their own reasons. The seers, basically, they are capable of seeing into the future. Now, any of the seers that are in the normal sect are, it's almost like a monastery. They're known as the acolytes, and the one who leads them is called the Pythia. That is a title that is given to the most powerful seer alive. She is, because the seers are always female, but the Pythia is someone who is capable of controlling the visions and actually able to, later on in the series, we find out that they're actually able to go back, and they are able to travel back in time. Now, the reason why the time travel is rather limited to the seers is because one thing that they're able to do that no other person would be able to do is they are able to look at the repercussions of their actions before it happens. So the Pythia is considered one of the most powerful people in the entire supernatural realm. Last, we have what they call Cassandras, which is a reference to the Greek myth of Cassandra, who always would tell the future and speak the truth, yet no one would believe her. So that could directly cause her predictions to become true. Now, Cassandras are basically acolytes who have broken away from the main monastery or the main group of the seers. So they are labeled as Cassandras, and this is what Cassandra Palmer is. She was given that name somewhat ironically by her parents. All right. Next we have the Fae. Fae in this series is split into two types. There's the Light Fae and the Dark Fae. Now the light fae are the more humanoid looking, like the She and the elves and Seer. Oftentimes, like the Aesir are also considered light fae in this series. So the dark fae are actually the more monstrous, like trolls, goblins. Now, all the fae can tend to appear to be human, so they can exist on Earth, although most of them prefer to live in fairy and the fae world. Alright, next we have ghosts. Ghosts are kind of an anomaly in this series because they are only able to be seen by necromancers. And because of the limited number of people who are capable of seeing them, because necromancers are extraordinarily rare, what that has led to being is that the supernatural world as a whole doesn't necessarily believe in them or take precautions against them, even though they are their own entities in their own right. Now we're told of 3 ways that ghosts come into being. First is those who have unresolved issues, and the ones with regrets. That's your standard, basically your ghosts where they can move on once their last wishes are fulfilled. Or next, we have guardians. The guardians are more people who the example that is given is like a grandmother who died but still wants to look after her grandchildren or her grandson. So she just stays behind to look after her loved ones, and she'll pass on when she's ready. Last, called the psychic imprints, and those are considered like an imprint isn't necessarily a fully sentient being. They are just stuck reliving the last moments of their existence, oftentimes in a horrifying manner. So the main character of the book, Cassandra, she can see and interact with ghosts, and she often learns where the imprints are and finds ways to go around them because there's nothing that can be done for them. It's suggested that they may eventually fade away, but they are the imprint is kind of stuck in that one specific area and is not capable of interacting. All right, now let's get into the magical weapons of the series. These are oftentimes considered, the first 2 are considered highly illegal to make, and many of the magical weapons are regulated and controlled, and owning them is never looked upon as a good thing. The null bombs are basically grenades that are capable of dispelling magic in the exact same way that a null would. Now, the reason why they're so illegal is that the only way to make them is to siphon that magic away from a null who is currently alive, and the process does inevitably kill them. So each null bomb that has been made is made from a murdered mage. Now, you might think, well, why don't they just make them from someone who's already about to die? And the reason why that is because the younger the null is that you use and the more powerful they are, the more effective the bomb. So an older one would not be nearly as effective as if a younger mage was kidnapped and killed for making the null bomb. Now, dislocators, those are illegal not because of how they're made, but because of what they do. Basically, it's a small magical grenade that, when thrown, it separates and rearranges a bunch of body parts and then combines them back together to create a horrific mass of flesh that is not even necessarily dead yet. If you'd ever seen the show One Piece, basically it's capable of doing what Trafalgar Law is capable of doing. Just separating body parts and reattaching them in sometimes random locations. The last main magical weapon that is heavily in use is wards. Now, wards are generally separated into 3 different types. First, you have your perimeter wards. These are used for things like hiding, like a basic physical shield, or perhaps concealment to change an illusion to change how something looks or to make something disappear. Another main ward is the energy wards. What those are is those are primarily for less of the physical of the perimeter, like the perimeter wards, and more emotional or mental. So basically, if you want to ward a room to calm people down, to make sure that they're not going to betray you or to trust you more, that would be a type of energy ward. And the last wards are called protection wards. Now, there's 2 types of those. There's personal shields. Personal shield is an innate ability that all magic users and all supernatural beings are capable of using. Basically just solidifying your willpower to protect yourself against magical attacks or other various spells. This is done, it is done through training. It's not something that comes easily or naturally to many people. But it is a training thing. Next we have the guards. Now what those are essentially like magical tattoos. And what they do is they will tattoo different shapes or forms onto a person's skin, and how the tattoo is, like the intent that is put on, then that tattoo gets linked to the person's own personal magical reservoir, and from there it can provide a very wide variety of effects. We're not really given much limitations. Like there's some that boost physical strength, others that provide stealth. It's very much not set in stone, 1-to-1 every time that it can happen. Also, they are capable of being transferred from one person to another, though that is not common, and it is not something that is regularly done. Basically because why would you give up some of your own protection for someone else? Now, wards are also known to interfere with electrical devices, so in a warded building, oftentimes like a cell phone won't work, or some, like lights don't necessarily work, so in the main areas of some of the political areas, oftentimes are lit by candles or fire. All right, moving on to the political entities. First, we have the North American Vampire Senate. There are various senates around the world that the vampires each control. Basically, what that is the ruling body of the vampires. It is always populated by level 1 vampire masters, and oftentimes that they are the ones that control the vampire world. It is led by being referred to as the consul, but one thing that Karen Chance does in her books is she'll often take people that are famous out of history and use them as her characters in the books. For instance, you have the consul, who is actually Cleopatra. Then you have Jack the Ripper, Mircea Basarab, who is the older brother of Vlad Tepes, which is said to be the inspiration for Dracula. And then there's playwright Kit Marlowe. They are all considered, at least the top three are some of the members of the North American Vampire Senate. And Marlowe is one of the top spies that has been working with the consul for centuries. Next, we have the Silver Circle. The Silver Circle is the political organization of the mages. They're the ones that basically control magic throughout the realms. And they are... I do not remember exactly if their leader has a specific name, but they are often allied with the Pythia and the Seers for reasons that are explained in later books. So the Silver Circle always claims that they have jurisdiction whenever a human with magic is involved, whereas the Senate always claims jurisdiction when it's vampires being involved. Next, we have the Black Circle. These are mages that do not want to work under the Silver Circle. Oftentimes, they are more willing to delve into black magics. They're the ones that provide those illegal weapons and produce them. So they are definitively considered the bad guys of the series. Now, one of the main members of the Black Circle is Rasputin, although we don't ever really see him too much because he is a first level master vampire, but what he's done is he's been plotting to overthrow the vampire senates, and he has been allied with the Black Circle as a means to do so. Next person is Antonio. He is on here not necessarily because he's famous, but he is the vampire master that raised Cassandra Palmer, so he's relevant. He eventually goes and flees directly to the Black Circle shortly near the beginning of the books because his business dealings basically became too much for the Vampire Senate to ignore. Then, like I said, the Black Circle also involves a lot of the black mages, the ones who do not care about the authority of the Silver Circle or any sort of morality surrounding what they're supposed to be using magic for. And the last person that joined the Black Circle and is what made them so dangerous is a dark acolyte, which, if you remember, was one of the seers. So she was one of the more powerful ones, and she is able to go back in time in a limited manner, affect things. So that is one reason why the Black Circle has become so dangerous. The next major entity is the Fey Kingdoms, and although the only one we really see and interact with near the beginning of the series are the Light Fey Kingdom and a dispute about their succession. That's dealt with in the Dorina Basarab series. And basically, that's a sort of side plot on that, and what's going on there is that there's a law in the Light Fey Kingdom that states that only a person who has more than half Fey blood is capable of inheriting the throne. But as for the current king, his only son is half human. So because he only has half Fey, or he's only half Fey, he cannot actually inherit his father's throne. So that's led to some disputes and to sort of an insurrection that Dorina gets pulled into. Alright, now we're going to talk a little bit about book one for each of the series. Now, like I said, for these series, there is you can read each series on its own, but there will be parts that you don't really understand and are left intentionally vague so that you only get the full comprehension if you read both series. But they're not a one-for-one. Like I said, there is a timeline in that I did post in the description that shows the correct location of each book in the timeline. So that way, if you follow that, you will never be lost as to where you're at in the overall story. Now, the Cassandra Palmer books, they mostly take place in Las Vegas. That's where she sort of sets up her base. Some of the main characters start with Cassandra Palmer. She is a Cassandra, which is, like I said, one of the acolytes of the seers that was not raised in their traditions or under their control, so she is considered a Cassandra, and that is also her name. Basically, what happened for that is her mother was one of the acolytes and one of the high-ranking ones, but she ran off with a necromancer who was her father, and they broke the rules. She was born out of that, so while she is a seer, she also has necromancer-like abilities, although that doesn't get more expounded upon until closer to the middle of the series. Next main character that we deal with in her series is Billy Joe. Billy Joe is a ghost who has attached himself to a necklace that Cassandra has taken to wearing. he basically is a spy that she uses because, like I said, most of the supernatural world has no ability to defend against ghosts. Oftentimes they don't necessarily believe that ghosts are real. So she can use him as a spy that can go anywhere and find out anything that she needs. So, next main character to deal with is John Pritkin. He is a war mage that is specifically sent to deal with Cassandra Palmer because of her status as a Cassandra, and he is there to well, initially he is there to kill her. He soon becomes an ardent defender of her because she is something that he recognizes that she is not a threat that the rest of the Silver Circle initially believed her to be. Next, we have Dorina Basarab. Like I said, he is considered one of the members of the Vampire Senate. He is one of the most powerful vampires in North America, and he is basically a key vampire contact that tries to always associate with Cassie because he is also the initial master of Antonio, right here, and Antonio is the one who raised Cassie Palmer. Basically, she was a member of his house, but basically what's going on with that is he found out about her abilities, and he arranged to have her parents killed or removed, and so he brought her into his house, and then he was using her ability to see into the future for profit. The issue is when she found out about it, she ran away. So, book one, she's been living on her own for a few years, and basically what's going on there is it's her initial, she is sort of rediscovered by the Vampire Senate, and they bring her in. At that time, John Pritkin shows up, and he insists on being a part of her guard, but also to keep an eye on her and to kill her if necessary. But then basically book one is her running, basically trying to continually get away from the Vampire Senate while also avoiding Antonio, who is also trying to get around the Vampire Senate because they have discovered like he is working against them in part, and he allies himself with the Black Circle. So this is just Cassie establishing a base of her own in Las Vegas while also avoiding and or making alliances with the other supernatural entities and powers in the area. Eventually, she does take over as the position of the Pythia, and she does eventually ally herself with the Silver Circle, but it does get into a little bit more complicated situation, and it does delve more into like why the Silver Circle was founded and what their goals are. So pretty interesting series. Highly recommend it. Next, we're going to get into the Dorina Basarab series. That book one here, while it takes place in New York City, it also doesn't take place till after book 3 of the Cassandra Palmer series. So, like I said, it does reference some things that happened early in those series. So, if you want the full story, you can. You'll have to read both series, but if you just want this series, just fine. It'll just leave you confused about some events that don't necessarily fit in unless you know the context of the other series. This is Dorina Basarab. She is a Dhampir, and what makes her, her basically reference to the whole, or her connection to the vampires is through her father, Mircea Basarab, which, like I said, he's a member of the Vampire North American Senate. So that has led to some protection for her because his importance to vampire society. They are more willing to overlook her being a Dhampir, even though they would normally just kill her out of principle. Now, oftentimes, the next main character is Louis Cesare. He is first brought up and mentioned in the Cassandra Palmer series, although his main role is in the Dorina Basarab series. So this is where I have him. He is a level 1 master vampire. He is actually based upon the character of the Man in the Iron Mask, and that is oftentimes, well, multiple times it is referenced. He is also a member of the Basarab clan because he was turned by Mircea Basarab's youngest brother, Radu, who is also a historical figure, and but it gets complicated due to time travel shenanigans, basically. But basically, the whole point of this book is Dorina is out searching for her roommate, Claire Lachesis, who is a null mage, but they've been living together for a while, and then one day she goes missing. So Dorina has to start searching and try to find her again. Now, what happens is, as Dorina is searching for them, Mircea shows up, and he basically blackmails her into a mission for him. Now, he has to do this because she doesn't like him very much, for reasons that are explained, and basically, he says that he is going to use all of the resources of the Senate to help find Claire if she helps him take down his other brother, Vlad, Dracula. Now, there's a long history between them that is explored further in the book, and how Vlad, or where Vlad has been for so long, and how he escaped. That is actually referenced in the other book the other series, but basically, in this is just Mercia and Dorina going after Vlad. So that's the main extent of this book. Like I said earlier, though, one of the side tangents of this book is them getting involved in the succession of the Fae, the Light Fae Kingdom, and that is explored more in depth in the later books of the series. Also, Dorina is Dorina's own abilities as a vampire, since she is half vampire, are also explored a bit further on. So that's these series. Very good series. A little bit complicated, especially in the reading order, but I know I said it multiple times. Each series can be read independently, and you will. It's a good series independently. It's just some things seem a little out of place unless you're reading them both and you actually understand what's going on, because they are not directly referenced per se. It's because the main characters don't necessarily know each other. So, very good series. Highly recommend it if you like urban fantasy. That's going to be it for there. Next week, I'm going to be discussing is the Frith Chronicles by Shami Stovall. That's a interesting series. It will be the first series that I consider to be like a young adult series, but it's worth pretty good. It's a decent read. So until next time, see ya.